Hi, everybody. Welcome to Downballot Roundup in partnership with Leave No Dem Behind, where I introduce you to Democrats running in local elections throughout the country. I'm Brian Randolph, and I'm here today with Gabriel Sanchez, who is running for the Georgia State House to represent the 42nd District. Gabriel, it is very nice to have you today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised here in Georgia. I'm a son of Colombian immigrants, and I've always grown up with a huge family. I have over 80 family members, relatives that live in the metro Atlanta area. So, I've always grown up with like big community, and that have always taught me the importance of giving back to your community. And that's really, what I'm all about is wanting to help people as much as I can. And so I did film before, as I've majored in film, but I realized that I really had a passion for wanting to help. So I went into politics, and now here I am.
Awesome. Awesome. And can you tell me about District 42 and kind of where you are?
Yeah, so it's right outside the city of Atlanta. House Music 42 includes Smyrna, Cumberland, where the Braves play, and the Dobbins Air Force Base area. And so, it's a very interesting community. It's a very working class, middle class community that's very diverse as well and very young. It's one of the last places that's still kind of affordable, relatively speaking, in the metro Atlanta area, although that's quickly changing, unfortunately. And, it's something that, there's a lot of young families here, and it's a very thriving community just right outside of the city.
And I'm sure you're out talking to people a lot. What are you kind of hearing from the people that you're talking to out on the street?
Number one issue, as I kind of talked about before or alluded to, is housing. Everyone's feeling it, the housing crisis. And actually, the metro Atlanta area has the most inflated housing market in the country. And we have the most corporate ownership of housing in the entire country. And so we have these huge corporations coming in, buying up all these properties and jacking up the prices, making it unattainable for working families. And then on the other side with the renters, the rent is just going up so insanely high. And we actually just had a landlord who was raided by the FBI here in Atlanta because of price fixing. And so, it's been a lot. People are really, really struggling with how much housing has gone up. And so that's my number one issue because I personally, this is the first year I've ever been able to renew my lease personally. So, it's personal for me, but it's also affecting so many people in my community. So we're going to do a
And
lot to work on it.
and if you get into the state house, what's a specific piece of legislation you might move forward on that issue?
So, there's a really good piece of legislation that the Senate Democrats on the national level introduced, and I want to do something similar where it regulates and prohibits private equity firms and from buying up single family housing. And it's something that I want to do is regulate that as much as possible because to me, a home should be for a family or for regular people, not for a huge corporation. So,
Excellent. All right. And I've spoken a lot about Dodge v Ford Motor Company on here, so anybody who knows that will realize how all this fits together. Um,
yeah.
has have you heard anything from your opponent on this issue? Are you guys really in on opposite sides, or is this somewhere where you differ?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that, she's just there to represent the status quo of Georgia, of leaving people behind and only really caring about the people at the top, the corporations and the wealthy elite. And I'm a different candidate, I'm someone who's really going to represent working people. And so there hasn't been much about her on housing specifically. So I don't know her exact policy, but based on her other policies, I can imagine it's not going to be doing much to help people.
What are some other policies where you guys are divergent?
Yeah, I mean, she's very much, has the traditional like Trump MAGA platform. She's all about that. And so, her slogan is defeat Socialist Sanchez. So, uh, that's basically what she's all about there. That's kind of a good picture there. But, like I said, I think her policies are very much about, the status quo that has not been working for people here in Georgia. It's about, banning abortions here in Georgia, making sure that we don't have access to healthcare here in the state of Georgia, and doing a lot of the work for what corporations and the wealthy elite not, but not for what the rest of us need. So
Now, something we've talked about a bit is that we keep hearing these kind of national news stories about how Georgia is shifting from red to purple, but kind of on the ground, is it more, do you think, I mean, I know you're a little bit closer into Atlanta, but do you think it's more of a hearts and minds change, or is it just more people voting? I realize there's not a simple answer to this question, but do you think there is sort of a shift in hearts and minds and people thinking a little bit differently than they were a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I've moved around in a metro Atlanta area, so I've lived in different places, including, one of the places that was a huge split ticket voters, which is kind of like the East Cobb area around here in Georgia, in my county. And so, there is a lot of people who are kind of changing and shifting. We're definitely seeing a political shift here in the state of Georgia, but it is both. It is also turning out the base. If it weren't for people like Stacey Abrams and Warnock and Ossoff and all the huge organizers on the ground here that I have had the pleasure of working with here working in the last decade in this state, we wouldn't have been here where we are now. We registered tens of thousands of people to vote, and at one point in this state, we had 97% of eligible people registered to vote. Um, and so, it was it's been an incredible organizing effort for the past decade here in Georgia. And because of that organizing, we've been able to not just persuade people, but also turn out the base, which is just as, if not more important, to make sure we get out the vote here in Georgia.
Are you also seeing, we've heard a lot about kind of the generational divide. Is it mostly a shift in the younger people, or do you also see kind of older um, traditional Republican voters somewhat shifting at all?
That's a good question, and I do think that there is a good amount of shift on all age groups. I do think that even in our age group, we're starting to see a shift in the other direction as well. And that's a concerning trend, I think, and something that I'm really working on because, I think unfortunately there's a lot of the male Gen Z generation that is primarily shifting that. And so as someone who is, a guy, I want to make sure that we have good representation and showing that it's okay to be someone who's a progressive, fighting for these things. But yeah, there's definitely been a shift in all age groups. But like I said before, it's the turnout is really what's been key here in Georgia. Turning out, I mean, we've had like huge, up to hundreds of amounts of percentage of increase in turnout amongst Asian Americans, Hispanics, as well as young voters here in Georgia, and that's really what's been driving the victories that we're seeing.
Fantastic. What was it that kind of finally drove you to make the shift and actually run for office?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working as an advocate and an organizer in my community for most of my adult life now, ever since I left the film industry. And, what I saw there was just so much people wanting to have a voice and wanting to have representation and not having that in the local level here in the state of Georgia. One of the biggest shocks for me when I started in politics working for a state representative was how the hallways of the state capitol were filled with corporate lobbyists, not with people, right? And so to me, if we're going to make it the people's house, we really got to actually mean that. And that's what really inspired me to run because we need more voices for the working class here in Georgia. And as well, also the Latino community. Only 2% of our legislators are Latino, even though we have 10% of the population here, over a million Latinos here in Georgia. And so we need more representation for our community, and that's a huge reason why I ran as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, so this is my final question. I call it my softball question. It's my favorite question.
Yeah,
I would like to know what it is about your district that makes it really special to you.
honestly, really, it's the people, the community. There's I lived in the city of Atlanta. I went to Georgia State, so I lived there for a while, and I really loved the city environment, And so, you know, unfortunately, I couldn't afford it anymore, so I had to move out here, and I was a little sad about it at first. But when I actually got to, know more of the community here, and it's such a nice, young, and like opening community, and people are always walking outside. Sometimes people associate the suburbs with like more like closed off people, and there's certainly areas like that in other parts of the county. But this area is like really, really nice. There's a lot of nice amenities. The community is very strong here, and so I love the people here. I go running every Monday with Smyrna Run Group here, and they're amazing people. And that's one of my favorite parts about it. So, and we have the Braves right across the street at the stadium, so a lot of people like to come here for that and celebrate and stuff. So that's always a cool time. Traffic not so great, but everything else is great. So, and it's a little bit more of a walkable community than most areas in Metro Atlanta. So,
Awesome. All right. Gabriel Sanchez is running for the Georgia State House in District 42. Thank you very much for being here.
yeah, thank you so much, and you can follow me at Sanchez number 4 Georgia.
Go follow him.
Thank you.